Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a topic that is absolutely critical if you're operating in the digital economy, specifically in the payment sector. We are decoding India's RBI Data Localization Mandate, drawing on some really fantastic insights directly from Cyber Ambassador. Because let's be real, in today's landscape, data localization isn't just some back-office IT issue anymore, it's a make-or-break survival issue for your business. Okay, so let's start with a really tough question. Is your payment data truly localized? I know, it sounds a bit dramatic, right? But for fintech executives and global IT managers, the answer to that question literally dictates whether your operations survive or if they get completely shut down by regulators. It really is that black and white. To get us sorted, here is our quick roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with what data localization actually is, move right into the very real risks of noncompliance, break down a specific 7-step audit process, and then wrap up with the strategic benefits of getting this right. All right, let's jump right into Section 1. What is data localization? So, at its core, the RBI Data Localization Rule is a firm, on-sovereign soil mandate. What does that actually mean for us? Well, it means your entire data lifecycle, the complete chain from collection to processing to ultimate storage, must legally reside on servers physically located within India. The big picture goal here is all about ensuring financial sovereignty and national security. Now, here is where a lot of folks get tripped up, because there's a really vital legal nuance between processing and storage. It's a super common misconception that you absolutely cannot process transactions outside of India. Actually, scratch that. That's completely false. Processing on global workflows is allowed temporarily. However, the ultimate permanent storage of that payment data, that has to be exclusively domestic. And that brings us to a very strict, fast-ticking clock, exactly 24 hours. If you decide to process data abroad, you have precisely a 24-hour window to permanently delete any payment data from those foreign systems. Once that timer hits zero, it essentially turns into a compliance time bomb. Every single trace must be stored exclusively in India. Okay, moving right along to Section 2, the risks of non-compliance. Let's look at what happens if things go wrong. You know, a seemingly perfect compliant primary database can actually hide some pretty catastrophic risks. You might think, hey, my main transaction data is securely sitting on a server in Mumbai. I'm good. But what about incomplete localization? If shadow copies of Indian payment data or tiny bits of metadata and PII are lingering somewhere on an international cloud server, well, you've got a massive compliance failure on your hands. And the fallout from those failures is incredibly severe. If an audit reveals metadata left abroad, regulators aren't just going to slap you with a fine. They can bring the hammer down with regulatory bans, totally barring you from onboarding new Indian customers. And the ultimate penalty for failing your system audit report, a complete operational shutdown, where your payment processing license is fully suspended. So, how do we avoid that nightmare? Let's get into Section 3, the 7-step audit process. To prevent these issues, Cyber Ambassador uses a structured audit process that begins with 3 foundational steps. First up is architecture mapping, where auditors meticulously trace the exact path of a payment transaction to identify every single server involved. Think of it like mapping out a giant puzzle. Second is storage verification, where they physically or virtually verify the geographical location of your primary and backup servers. And third is data lifecycle analysis, auditing exactly how data moves, gets processed abroad, and eventually stored back in India. Moving into Phase 2, we have the incredibly crucial Step 4, purge verification, which we'll look at closer in just a second. Step 5 is access control review, basically making sure remote access to Indian data from foreign offices is strictly locked down and monitored. Step 6 is all about gathering the hard technical proof, IP traces, logs, certificates. Finally, Step 7 culminates in the issuance of the Formal System Audit Report, or SAR, which is the mandatory independent report the RBI demands. Now, I really want to zoom in on Step 4, purge verification, because honestly, this is the exact spot where so many global companies stumble. Confirming that every single shadow copy is fully wiped from foreign servers before that 24-hour timer expires is technically complex. It's a huge hurdle. You have to prove without a shadow of a doubt that the temporary data is completely gone. Let's pivot a bit for our final section, Section 4, benefits of getting it right. It's not all doom and gloom. Beyond just avoiding those massive fines and shutdowns we talked about, achieving absolute compliance is actually a massive competitive advantage.
First off, it guarantees your global payment grand uninterrupted access to grow in the massive Indian market. Second, it actively aligns you with India's digital sovereignty and national security goals, which reduces foreign surveillance risks. Plus, keeping data local allows for much faster dispute resolution by Indian law enforcement. And of course, a clean audit means you entirely avoid the PR nightmares of being labeled non-compliant.
I think Cyber Ambassador's mandate really hits the nail on the head here. Your data, our soil. Absolute compliance. That perfectly captures the endgame. It's all about bridging that gap between your global IT operations and local regulations. When your infrastructure is both highly efficient and entirely secure in the eyes of the RBI, you get to operate with total confidence. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought today. In a regulatory environment where just a single, tiny, overlooked shadow copy on a foreign server can trigger a complete operational shutdown, can your firm really afford to just keep guessing? Trust the structured audit process, map your architecture, and make sure your market access isn't hanging by a thread. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.